I was recently hanging out in therapist Facebook groups, the way we always do, and I saw a comment show up in one of my favorite of these groups called the Private Pay Practitioners Facebook group. And I wanted to respond to it because it's such a common question. This is what it said. I'm summarizing and cutting things out. Can we talk about retention? I am not sure if private pay has a higher drop-off rate than typical therapy, which I would even venture to guess has high rates of drop-off. I knew I was running a revolving door when I went into private pay. Does anyone have tips or insights they can share on retention? So I was excited to see this comment because it is such a well-known question. People are constantly trying to figure out how they can keep their clients without losing them. Their right fit clients, the ones that should be there, the ones who actually want to be there and benefit from treatment. And I was excited because I was able to jump into the comment section of this post and share a little bit about our retention project. That's what we call it at Thriving Child Center and PCIT experts. I happen to have a system that I've set up and have been implementing and tweaking for the past couple years that is now worth multiple six figures in my practice. And it is our way of making sure that the clients who want to be with us stay with us. And we're not just losing them due to disorganization or executive functioning. And that's what I'm going to share with you in today's episode. I'm going to start off the episode by telling you a story about swim school. So I have two little kids and I live in Texas. And it's very, very important in Texas that your kids know how to swim in the pool. There are so many drowning deaths a year. It is terrifying to me as a mom. So the most protective thing I can do is make sure that my kids are in swim class and learning how to swim safely. So what did I do? I enrolled them in one of those swim schools where we have weekly sessions. So this was going on. We were bringing them every Sunday and then having lunch after. It was kind of a nice tradition. But then we were doing this over the summer, and so we had some vacations come up. So I called the swim school and I said, listen, we're going to be out for the next couple of weeks and then we'll come back. And they said, oh, well, just let us know when you come back and we'll schedule the next time for you to come in. And I said, are you sure you want to do that? I could just put it on my schedule right now. I'm sitting there with my calendar. And they were like, no, just call us back later when your schedule stabilizes. And I knew in that moment in my gut that we were never going to end up at that swim school. And here is why. Even though I am deeply committed to teaching my kids how to swim, and even though we were already established at that swim school, I am so busy that the executive functioning task of scheduling something new is the most likely thing to fall off my calendar. That's why I actually pushed back in the call. Most of our patients won't do that, but I pushed back because I know this about myself. I know that I want to already have scheduled the next appointment, but they didn't want to do it in that moment. And so, unfortunately, as a result of that, my kids never got rescheduled back at that swim school, which was bad for all of us. It was bad for them as a business. They lost me as a client. When we did end up coming back to swimming, I actually picked a private swim instructor somewhere else. And it was bad for me because it meant that there was 6 months of time that my kids did not learn how to swim. So I would have been joyfully a continued client there if they had just taken that last step. And I was so aware of it even at the time that I called my admin team and I said to them, this just happened to me. We will never do this as a business to our clients. We will always make sure that people get their next session scheduled. And so that and many other things were the reason that we created what we call the retention project. It should probably be renamed at this point to the rebooking project. But our goal is that every single client who does not schedule a next session and who wants to stay in therapy with us should get another appointment. The secret to this is that we don't leave it up to chance. We don't leave it up to the clients to, in the midst of their busy lives, remember that they missed therapy and they need to come back. We also don't leave it up to our therapists to make sure that the clients are scheduled. Now, so I'm not saying that we don't encourage our therapists to schedule their clients. We do. Like we say to them, listen, schedule out 6 sessions and then think about when those are coming to an end that you should schedule some more. We talk about how it's important at the end of your last session to say, hey, I just want to confirm your next session. I currently have you scheduled for this day and time. Does that still work? However, there are times where clients, it just isn't working. Like they're about to go on vacation, their schedule's changing. They don't know what time they're going to come in next. And we can tell our therapists, like, go ahead and follow up with them yourself. But then that is leaving all of the responsibility on a busy therapist. And that therapist might not be good at remembering, right? They might be busy and forget, hey, I'm supposed to schedule this person to come back in. Or even if they reach out, what if they miss them, right? Like what if the client misses that phone call or doesn't respond to that email? I myself once ignored 3 text messages from my therapist trying to schedule a new session with me that I wanted, because every time I got the text message, I wasn't anywhere near my schedule and I didn't know when I was available. It took the 4th text message for me to schedule. And every single time where a client could be scheduled and is not is a loss to the practice and a loss to the healing experience of that client. Because what we all know is that coming in regularly to therapy is what makes people better, right? As long as it's the right modality, that it's that being able to come in as much as they really need it to get the treatment dose that is actually optimal for their health. And all of them want that. So we need to really, really focus on making sure that we retain the clients that we want to have. The other reason is a financial reason for the practice. Attracting in a new client and setting them up for the first time is so much harder and more expensive than keeping a client who is already committed and is already working with their current therapist. So what do? What are the bones of our retention process? Now, I'm going to give you this disclaimer up front that in our retention project, we do have a CRM. So we have a system where we automate a lot of this process. I'm going to tell you how I would do it if I didn't have a CRM, which really honestly does help, and also some of the things we have set up with our CRM. It also really helps if you have a dedicated admin. You can do this yourself if you're solo and doing all of your own admin work, but it will be harder because it requires regularly going through. So here is our system. So I have an office manager and an admin. Our admin owns the retention project. It's his responsibility. So every day he goes through our client list and he sees who has canceled, no-showed, or hasn't scheduled their next appointment. And they get entered into what we call the retention project system, right? They get put into the beginning of that funnel. We don't contact them, by the way, that day. We give them 2 days because maybe they need to call back, or maybe they were sick, or maybe they need to figure something out. So we're not like on the day that they canceled or on the day that they didn't schedule something new. We're not like on top of them, but we only give them a couple of days and then we start reaching out to them. And we reach out to them 3 ways. We reach out to them by phone. We reach out to them through our HIPAA texting system, and we reach out to them over email. And there's a whole series of texts and emails and phone calls that they receive over time. So they get an initial phone call, just asking, coupled with a text message. Then I think a couple days later, they get an email. So basically what I did is went down the rabbit hole of what research says is the optimal amount of times to contact people. And we built it into our automated system so that once they enter that funnel, those texts and emails are going out automatically. If they say stop or decline, then the process stops. Also, our admin is getting emails saying, hey, this is the day when you need to contact this person, and here's the script to use. With our current system, we are able to get 40% of people back on the schedule. So you have to remember that this sample size also includes people who are done with therapy, but we don't know it for some reason. Like maybe they have gotten a lot better and they haven't actually told their therapist that, but they're ready to go. That's why they didn't schedule something else. Maybe they're not satisfied with treatment and they're canceling, which is actually very important for us to know, like if that's what's going on, so that we can figure out what went wrong, give that feedback to the therapist, or change something about the way that we're matching our clients with therapists if there was any sort of fit there. So it's going to put in the people who don't want treatment. And then it's going to put in all of the people who do want treatment, who are just disorganized, busy, living our chaotic lives. Maybe they just got through Mayvember or it's in summer vacation, and we're trying to get them back on. Now, this is an old process, actually. I have recently redone the entire thing, and I've been waiting for us to roll it out. And what I am expecting is that when we roll out this more intensive, well-researched retention project, we should see that rate spike from 40% to hopefully 60 or 70%. We also use it as a way of giving that feedback. So if someone says, well, my therapist doesn't have times that work for me anymore, we need to know that so that we can either talk to their therapist or try to get them on with someone else. If they say, I don't want to work with that person anymore, it does let us give feedback to the therapist. So our communication overall gets better, our customer service gets better, and our clients are just super grateful that we're reaching out to them and caring about them and getting them back on the schedules. We even can do this if a client is taking a planned break. So if they say, hey, we're traveling Europe for the summer, please contact us in September. Great. We get them in the system. There's a way of entering it and delaying it until September, and then the whole process starts. So nobody's being left out. So if this is being done correctly, if my admin is on the ball and doing this project correctly, and if there's not something going on behind the scenes where it's not being communicated, we are able to contact 100% of people who do not schedule their next appointment. This is ideal. And I honestly think it is the reason that we do not experience usually much of a summer slump. The summer slump we experience is because clinicians are out of town. It's because they've gone on vacation. There's no place to put the clients, but we're able to really maintain a steady caseload across the year because we're not losing people due to disorganization and communication problems. How can you implement this if you don't have a fancy CRM? Well, you're going to have to start tracking things somewhere. I would encourage you to start tracking maybe in an Excel document. So like going in, looking through the caseloads, who has not rescheduled, and then having a list of those people and a certain amount of reach outs. You can also put in some scripts for what your admin is going to say at different times, and you want to track how many responses did you get. So when are they going to send a text? When are they going to send the email? That can be a template. The text can be a template. When are they going to do the phone call that's scripted? And then making sure that those things are actually happening and keeping track of the outcomes of all of that. It is more complicated, but the return on investment, think about what you are charging per session. Every client that should be seen and is not seen, you are losing how much, right? How much does your session cost? Are you losing $250? Are you losing $350? See how this is such a valuable process? If your client leaves because they can't get in with you and they start seeing another therapist somewhere else, do you see how expensive that loss is? So even though this is a pain, it is absolutely worth allocating your time and attention to. It is honestly one of the things in my practice that I am most happy we have implemented. And I'm going to continue to tweak and look at our data and adjust it forever. I feel so good about it. I think sometimes there's a hesitation to keep contacting clients. And I think this comes from kind of an old school therapy belief that I was raised with, at least, where it was like, we shouldn't do more work than the client. right? Like if they want to be in therapy, they will reach out to us. And maybe that made sense in a psychodynamic model before the internet and all of these distractions and apps and things that you have to constantly be attending to. But now in this day and age, there are plenty of people who really want to do something and they just cannot get their act together to contact us back. And it's not because they don't care, and it's not because they're not motivated. It's just because, like me, they get overwhelmed and they can lack the executive functioning to make that happen. It's also not too pushy, right? Obviously, if a client says they don't want to do it, you don't push them to do it, right? If they say, I actually feel like I'm done with this person, you're not like trying to force them to come back. You're taking that feedback, you're letting their therapist know, and at least now you have an answer. Okay, that client was lost to the process. And that's important data for you to have as well. So I don't mean this to be like a pushy sales process. It's just about reaching out to people and making their lives easier. So I'm curious as to what you think. I truly believe in this process. It has, again, just brought in so much revenue and kept our therapists full and kept our clients happy and also feeling cared about. If you like this episode and you feel like it's helpful to you, go ahead and give me a 5-star review. I did not realize until recently that 5-star reviews are actually important and drive people to the podcast, but they are. So if you like this and you feel like it's helpful, go ahead and follow, give that review, and send it on to a friend who might need it too. Let me know whatever questions you might have. You can email me directly at hello@worthitpractice.com. And I hope to talk to you again next week.